Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Thompson, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. It's Wildcard Week. How wild are you feeling?
Not super wild. I'm not going to lie. I told you that this Patriots-Bills matchup was going to be high anxiety for me all week. The prospect of knocking the Patriots out, ending their season, being able to talk shit all off season long feels fantastic. The yin to that yang is those guys being able to do that to us. Don't like this.
The end of it. Ever.
Don't like it. Feels weird. I'm not a fan. I would rather play an uncommon opponent and
Chargers, Raiders.
Yeah, somebody that we haven't played twice in the last 7 weeks.
Revenge on the Steelers.
Yeah.
Any of those would have been lovely.
Yeah. But here we are.
Yeah, we are here. And, you know, I'm going to try to thrive on that anxiety and excitement and the potential to, knock them out of the playoffs and the stress that goes along with it, with the high that will come with doing it, and have faith in that. And we'll see where it goes. I have a feeling I'm going to need a lot of Uncle Jumbos as it goes through. So thank you to our presenting sponsor, Uncle Jumbo's. Really excited. They just did their announcement about their tasting room. Going to be opening up around Valentine's Day. Excited to check that out. Should be a lot of fun.
Hopefully Super Bowl celebration.
Could be exciting. And obviously the one I've gotten a ton of good feedback on, really excited, our new friends over at bookseats.com. A bunch of people checking out their site, coming into town for the weekend. You're looking for a hotel, want to check out Niagara Falls for a night, go into the game, have a good time, whatever you need. If you need to fly in, you can get your flights. If you just need tickets, you can just get tickets and hotel. You can do any combination or package, and hopefully we'll see how this matchup goes. Maybe there's a fun long road playoff route that you have to go through, and you need tickets to Kansas City, and then you need tickets to Tennessee, and then you need tickets to LA, and be able to get yourself set up. Bookseats.com is going to be there for you the entire way along. Whatever you need, you can splurge on tickets and save money on a hotel, or you can get a nice plush hotel but find a cheaper flight, or you can get extra leg room on the flight. Whatever you need, they're going to be able to help you out. Really excited to be working with them, and excited to be able to add a new partner to the Cover One portfolio.
Absolutely. And this postseason, maybe even draft vacations for people.
Could be fun.
A lot of flights from Buffalo to Vegas.
I've never been to Las Vegas. That sounds fun.
That does sound fun. And I hear there's good flights. So be looking on bookseats.com for some good flights from Vegas to Buffalo and go party out there. But yeah, go check them out. Like I was saying last time, and I was actually talking to a friend of mine this week that's a Patriots fan, because every single one of my Patriots friends have hit me up here this week. I was telling him about this new sponsor and what they do, because he was a friend of mine that we've tried to go, pre-COVID, even try to go to at least one game a year. And he is cool enough of a Patriots fan to know that I won't go to a road Patriots game, but he'll go to road Bills games. He's a good friend of mine, right? But he was like, yeah, a site like that would be perfect, because we're just going to all these different sites, sending each other links and back and forth and stuff like that. So he was like, wow, that sounds perfect. Can you send me links? So I did. So if you're trying to plan trips with friends, it comes in handy.
Well, Rich Haynes, who helped us out with the Cover One Fantasy Show this year, already scoped it out. The Cleveland's going to Buffalo next year, and already wants to set up a trip to be able to go out.
Yeah, I got to do Chicago next year. My brother is making me. Their Bills are playing in Chicago. I don't want to go, but he's making me do it.
So again, we're excited to be working with them. But without further ado, as we get into this matchup, obviously we couldn't do this without the wonderful guest that we have in our universe here. And you guys know him as the host of the Pats Pulpit, his work on NFL Wire, Mark Schofield. Mark, welcome aboard. Welcome back. It's third time in 7 weeks. It's a little wacky. How do you guys feel about that yin and yang that Aaron talked about here coming in?
We feel great about this. Now get a couple of these Uncle Jumbo's blueberries lemonades in me, and I'll tell you how terrified we actually are. I mean, look, I think there's an air of reservation about this game in a sense. It's not like the Patriots are sort of roaring into the playoffs. I mean, they've lost 3 of their last 4. They lost 2 coming out of the bye week, 1 to the Buffalo Bills in a game that certainly wasn't like the first meeting between those 2 teams when you didn't have that 50-mile-an-hour wind to sort of slow that Bills passing game down. You saw a little bit more of what that Bills offense can do against this defense. And so, there's some reservation about this game. Now, I don't think Patriots fans are sort of writing it off. I don't think, people are packing it in, but I don't think there's like a supreme confident air about the way the Patriots have played down the stretch that gives people the belief that they're going to go into Buffalo Saturday night and sort of walk away with it. They could win this game. It's certainly not going to be easy.
Do you think so? A lot here is being made about it's going to be real cold. We've been talking about the weather a lot here. You've played quarterback way more than I have. Do you think just straight cold weather has that much of an impact? It's not going to be the wind. We're seeing like 7-mile-an-hour winds, but we're talking 0 degrees, feels like -3-4 degrees. It's pretty cold. Do you think that's going to have the type of impact where the Patriots can come out and just run 45 straight times like they did in that win game? Or is this going to be more closer to even weather conditions?
I mean, I think it's more closer to even weather conditions. And I mean, I do think that, look, I saw some of the numbers floating around about what Josh Allen has done in cold weather. And he's also a guy that played college ball at Wyoming. And he's going up against a rookie quarterback who played his college ball in the SEC. Like, Mac Jones hasn't had a ton of games in weather like this where, the temperature, it does take a toll on you. Your hand gets cold. It gets frozen. Ball feels like a rock sometimes. Like for receivers, if you're Stephon Diggs, I saw him talking about, hey, man, take a little bit off of it this weekend, right? Because I don't need it to be like 9 degrees, feels like 0, and you're throwing absolute bullets at me. Like, dial it back a little bit. So, I mean, if I'm a receiver, I'm more worried about it than anything else. But no, it's more equal weather footing. If wind picks up, wind is really the toughest thing for quarterbacks to deal with. When the ball is wet, when it's rain, when it's snow, like you can sort of work around that. You can wear a glove, things like that. Wind is the unpredictability when you don't know where the ball is going. And I think we saw that play out in the first game where, I really think that last throw that Allen made when he threw the dig route, the post route to the outside, it was because that was the direction. It was easiest to feel where the wind was going to go. Even though that inside post was open, he threw it to the outside because he was most sure of that ball placement. And so without that element, cold, it's something you can sort of work with. You can, stay warm on the sidelines. Josh, I'll let a little secret in. You got a triple sock it. You were talking about the toes getting cold. You got to go triple socks now on Saturday night. Forget the double socks. Go triple. You can find ways to work around that. It's the unpredictability of the wind that's tougher to deal with.
Josh has his hoodie pockets. He has the hoodie pockets cut into his jersey. Get the hand warmers in the hoodie pockets.
You know what I used to do? I used to have candy in there. I used to put Skittles in there, and my linemen, I'd be like doling out Skittles before plays.
Protect me here.
That's how you make friends. That's how you make friends.
You want the yellow ones? Here you go. You get the yellow Skittles. Like, you do some of that stuff, keep the hands warm, and you'll be fine. But it's really the wind that's like, you don't know where the ball. I didn't know where the ball was going anyway, but when you get that wind to deal with, you have no idea where it's going. So, that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, we'll see some of the things that come up. Not necessarily, like you said, throwing the balls, but sometimes even just grip on the ball when it gets that cold. Right. Now, all of a sudden, you start getting weird stuff because I know Aaron specifically, got into it with a lot of people today about the weather and how to prepare for it. And some of it, like, literally the physics of it, you can't practice -5.
Like your body can't acclimate in 2 days.
And how is the ball gonna feel at -5? And is that going to be an issue, especially in some of the quick passing games?
Are you winding me up for an ideal gas law, deflate gate?
Yeah,
Is that what you're trying to steer this conversation?
Gas inside of a ball.
How much inflation do you think should be in the ball to have it ready to grip for these kind of environments? So we'll see. I don't think there's a huge difference. Obviously, Josh has huge hands is there, but also he puts a lot more torque on the ball. And I'm curious, like, is that ever going to come into play where he thinks he has a good grip? And, obviously we're hoping if one of those slips that it's just out of bounds or out of there, and it's not one that flutters into somebody's arms. But I'm curious to see, does that come into play later? Ball security, taking it from center, or, do you have the sure grip that you normally do? And just how how whoever the official team scuffer, whoever the team scuffer is on the team, like that dude's job that night, really get those things as tacky as possible before the outing. So Aaron brought up the weather. The next one that's been there is the injury report. So I'm going to bring it up because it's too many names for me to read off. And it's really funny. We joked, before the show as we were kind of talking about that the two teams have gone polar opposites. I don't think it's actually that half the Patriots roster is injured and no one on the Bills is. But the Bills, obviously, anybody who's dinged up, they're not listing at all. Yeah. And the Patriots, I'm guessing that the vast majority of these limited guys are going to participate. Coming in, the ones I was worried about were Isaiah Wynn and Christian Barmore. Those are the two key guys. Now, Jamie Collins added as a do not participate today. Let's just focus on those three. What are you hearing on Wynn, Barmore, and Collins?
I mean, Barmore dodged a big bullet. I mean, because that collision, it looked like, man, he got carted off.
Anytime you hear carted off, you know where your mind goes.
I thought in the moment seeing that season over, and that was going to be a problem if he's out. Because, look, a lot of what they do in the interior starts with Guy and Barmore. Those are two guys who can get push up front. If you think about sort of slowing down this Bills passing game, getting some pressure on Josh Allen, sort of getting him a little bit uncomfortable in the pocket, Barmore's one of the guys you turn to first, getting that sort of interior push. The fact that he dodged that, the MRI came back clean and is already back to sort of limited, makes me think he's going to go. I think Wynn, is going to be able to go too. From what I've been hearing, he should be good. Collins popping up here. It's not like with Wynn, with Barmore, there were injuries on Sunday and one's limited, one's, limited, didn't participate. Collins popping up late. I mean, it's Wednesday. That's a little bit more worrisome. And when you start thinking about, okay, how do you defend Josh Allen, which is what I've been wrestling my mind with the past couple of days. What do you do with him? The Patriots, they still play a little bit more zone coverage. I think they've played 48 zone snaps and dropbacks over the two games, 23 in man, something like that. But what do you do with Allen? What do you do on 3rd and 7? Do you start thinking about spying him? Because I'm very worried about his legs. Matthew Judon talking to the media today was basically saying, look, we're worried about what Josh Allen does with his legs. I mean, the last thing you need, 3rd and 7, midfield, in Buffalo territory or something, and you give up a scramble for a first down. Like, you've got to get off the field. So Collins is a guy that could be used as a potential spy for Allen if they were going to go that route. Him popping up on the injury report, did not participate with an ankle, that's a little bit worrisome. So, we'll wait and see on him, but that's one that's got me a little bit concerned sitting here right now.
You throw Duggar in that role if it's not?
Aaron, I mean, I thought about that too. I mean, because, when you look at this Buffalo, a couple of things worry about me about this Buffalo offense right now. One is I know everybody's excited. Stephon Diggs, JC Jackson, the two of them, that's the heavyweight matchup. That's fine. As I wrote today, though, if you're Buffalo, you want to win the undercards. And you've got a huge advantage there because, Miles Bryant, he got picked on, in the Week 16 game.
I'm guessing they'll have a new strategy this week, but still, it
was the problem is, though, you've got now Jalen Mills on the COVID list. And so
is that going to be out? Is that trending?
I mean, I think he's vaccinated, so he's in a window where he could come back.
Right.
But we'll see.
But the combination you have is, assuming he is, you have that he went out on a Tuesday, so it wasn't a Monday. And the only people that get tested now to go out is if you are having symptoms. So he had symptoms on Tuesday. He would have to have no symptoms with a negative test before Saturday to come back. That's a 4-day window for somebody who had symptoms. So it's possible. It seems
non-zero chance. Say it.
It seems challenging. It is. It's a non-zero chance.
Tough. Yeah, I mean,
but
that's
it seems challenging.
Small window.
Sure.
If
and no game planning and no practice. Belichick doesn't love that.
And that's the other thing. Like, you think, okay, well, he'll be available Saturday. Yeah, but when they're doing the installs on Wednesday and Thursday, he's not there. It's because he's got to isolate. So that's going to be a problem. Sort of those undercards, and then you think about, well, maybe you use Duggar as somebody to sort of take away some of those crossers, the stuff that they were doing in that Week 16 game with McKenzie and other stuff. Well, then you take him away and have him spy on Josh Allen. I mean, so it's a thing that I'm wrestling with. I hope Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick have a better answer for it than I do, which is basically, I don't know. But yeah, Aaron, Duggar is certainly an option there because he's athletic. He can get sideline to sideline. He could mirror Josh Allen in that role. So that would be an option. If it's not Collins, maybe it's him. But they got to come up with some sort of solution for Allen on these third downs, on those sort of situations, because he's run for over 100 yards against the Patriots in 2 games. He's had some big runs in these 2 games, to extend drives, to keep plays alive and things like that. They've got to have an answer for that.
I've got a question that sort of piggybacks off of this real quick. I think that Belichick game plan in that last game seemed almost like maybe Josh was in his head a little bit. And he was trying to say, hey, Josh can't be patient. So, Bills fans made a lot about, hey, the pass protection in that game was great. But really, if you look at that film, the Patriots were not pinning their ears back and trying to get to Josh. And when they did bring blitzes and stuff like that, they were getting pressure. It was a muddled pass rush and trying to contain Josh and let him have some time. And he's going to make more mistakes than not. And we're going to get him into a mistake. And that backfired big time. You saw that. I think that's where Isaiah McKenzie was able to get open, is he had time to allow those crossers to develop. That we haven't had that here in Buffalo this year. The pass rush has been getting to Josh, and he doesn't have time for those to develop. We're not going to see that same type of game plan. Why did Belichick stick to that game plan throughout the game? Because he's been known to make adjustments throughout his career, and we didn't see a lot of adjustments. And what is he going to do? He's not going to roll that out again.
Right. I mean, I think there were sort of 2 reasons. One, they thought at some point they were going to be able to get pressure. They were going to be able to get home. And sort of a quiet sort of part of the second half of their year is Matthew Judon had that tremendous start. And he's been really quiet since that first Buffalo game. I think that was the last sack he notched was in that game. And so they thought at some point, look, he's going to get home. Like, they're going to get home. They're going to get to Allen at some point. And it hasn't happened. And so I think they thought at some point, given what that offensive line has struggled to do with protecting Josh Allen, how teams were able to get pressure with 4 on Josh Allen on a pretty consistent basis earlier in the year and even into the second half of the year, they thought they'd be able to get home. That didn't work. And they thought that Allen was going to be impatient. They thought that at some point, look, he's going to get flustered. Even if we can't get home, pressure is productive. He's going to make a mistake. And he wasn't. He was very patient. I mean, I think the play that sticks in my mind was the crosser from McKenzie working all the way from the right slot to the left side. That was against more of a zone look, but Allen sort of slid to the left, let it develop, hit that late in that late window and all on the left side. Very patient play. They didn't think Allen was going to be able to do that, and he did it. And so as far as what they do, I mean, I do you play more zone coverage? You keep eyes on him? Well, sure, but his adjusted net yards per attempt, 6.4 against zone coverage this year, 6.1 against man. Like, he's been good against man. I mean, but better against zone just a tiny little bit. And so, yeah, you might want to play zone, keep eyes on him, force him to make some late decisions into the tight windows, but he can do that. I mean, he's a tough problem to solve. I think ultimately Belichick wants to live in a man coverage world. They'll probably play a decent amount of man coverage, hope they can get things covered up, and hope they do a better job up front, getting pressure and getting home.
Well, I'm expecting a combination. I'm expecting it to be more of that same game plan early, because if you have Barmore winning one-on-one, if you have a guy win one-on-one, if you have Wise win one-on-one, Judon, and you're dropping not 8, but you're still doing that muddled contain with the floating spy, and you're covering plenty of it, that's obviously the optimal path. But if they start to pull ahead, I expect them to throw some variance in as the game goes. And it's going to get to a point where, like, all right, screw it. We know we're playing with fire. We know this isn't our preferred path, but we got to either force something or create something to happen. Because if we just keep sitting back here, he's obviously going to keep doing what he's doing. So I expect that if the Bills were to get an early lead or have some early success, not crazy, but they're moving the ball and it's doing the same thing. He's taking the checkdowns. He's moving long, sustained drives. I expect to start to see more pressure as the game goes, as the frustration or concern rises. Yeah.
And I mean, do they start doing some zero blitz stuff? Do they start really sort of burning the house? I mean, that play at the end of the first game, when it looked like, wait, they're really going to go zero blitz on this last final do or die play, they rolled with it. They rolled the dice. They thought they were going to force the quick throw and be in a position to cover it. Do they start doing some more stuff that even a little early in the game? Do we see them roll that out early and say, look, we're going to try to force the issue, try to get a turnover, try to get a mistake, try to get Mac Jones and company a short field? We might see that sooner rather than later.
So give it to us, Mark. We've talked about this matchup. We just talked about it when we were offline here. This is the third time in 7 weeks. There's nothing we don't know about these teams. We're both a little nervous. There's anxiety. How do you think this game goes in Buffalo this weekend? Give us a little bit about the game and then a score prediction for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no real secrets to this. I mean, I'm doing a series over at USA Today's Touch on Wire about like the 3 things each team has to do to win their games. It's like the Bills got to stop the run because they know the Patriots are going to want to run. They want to force Mac Jones to win the game and force him to win outside the numbers and deep. And, you're going to want to sort of win those undercard matchups like we talked about. Yeah, Diggs will get his targets, but they have an advantage everywhere else. For the Patriots, run the football, put Mac Jones in positions to be successful, and then they've got to find a way to sort of confuse the look for Josh Allen and keep eyes on him. I mean, this is the third meeting between these teams. We've all talked about this a ton. As far as how I see it playing out, I expect it to be a close game. I mean, third meeting, these teams are very familiar with each other. There'll be some adjustments from the previous game. I'd expect the Patriots to find some ways to get Mac Jones some easy reads and throws. I think they can't just come out and say, look, we're going to run the football. They got to throw it. You watch what the Buffalo Bills did defensively in that second meeting. They were very aggressive on the second level. Klein and company and Milano and Edmonds, they were coming downhill. They were stacking the box. They were basically saying, look, throw it. They still didn't really start throwing the ball until a little bit later in that game. And the Bills started to build that little lead. So I expect them to throw it a little bit more early. I'm not confident that New England goes and wins this game. Look, they lost 3 out of the last 4. Yes, they had a nice game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but most teams could play well against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Except us.
A couple of exceptions. But, yeah. I mean, look, Jacksonville's a team that was
us and the
struggling.
Colts, apparently.
Yeah, I mean.
That
look,
was nice. The Colts also getting Bears.
I mean, you lose to a stadium filled with clowns. I mean,
literally filled with clowns, and you leave with the clown makeup on. Yeah,
an organization that is getting sued by roofclaim.com for the clown protest. Like, yeah, that's a problem. Indy, danger signs, red flags all around it. Indy. As far as this one, I think it's a one-score game. Like, it's a 24-20 kind of thing. My heart is telling me, yeah, the Patriots, Bill Belichick, they'll find a way to pull it out. But having spent the past couple of days, like rewatching, that second game, seeing how the Patriots have played down the stretch, it's not like the Buffalo Bills are coming in red hot, but the Patriots aren't even coming in at like lukewarm right now. It's hard to really feel confident. And ultimately, look, playoff games sometimes come down to the quarterbacks. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. Josh Allen made a run to the AFC Championship game last year. Mac Jones, he won a national title last year, sure, but this is going to be different. This is NFL playoff football. Mac Jones is going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's a good rookie quarterback right now. But right now, if you're asking me to pick who I trust more, it's Josh Allen. And when you've got NBC Sports Boston putting out polls this week, should Brian Hoyer get a series or two because it's going to be cold Saturday
That was
night.
whack of them, though. That was whack.
That's such just throwing chum in the water.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. But
I'm sure I saw all of the
WEI style.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all got to get clicks, right? I get it.
Yeah,
but
true.
like the fact that that's on the mind of people right now tells you where the mindset is. There's uncertainty about Mac Jones. At some point, look, he's going to have to throw to win a game, not just throw to get him back like they did against Indy or to some extent against Buffalo in this game. Throw to win a game. Can he do that? At some point, he's going to have to. Can he do it Saturday night? That I'm not too sure about.
Appreciate you as always. Obviously, make sure you guys checking it out. Mark's work all the time, whether it's NFL Wire, the Quarterback Wire, Pats Pulpit. You can
Always
find
grinding.
him. The man is putting out work everywhere across the interwebs. Make sure you check him out.
Still
you
making
him.
time for schmucks like us.
Yeah,
No, you guys are just kind enough to have me on. Talk about it. I mean, look at this. This is Schmuck Central right here.
We appreciate you. Hope for a fun, entertaining game Saturday night, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Take care, man.
Without further ado, we are
this.
bringing you guys an amazing lineup of guests tonight.
Heavyweights.
And coming back to back with Mark Schofield. Now coming back with our man, Evan Lazar. Boom. How we doing, Evan?
Oh, we got you muted. You're muted, bud. There
Boom.
he is. There we go.
Wow, amateur move. We could have had Mark go second, so I didn't have to follow up Mark Schofield. I should have came with me first, so I didn't have to live up to it. No, I'm just kidding. Mark is the best, and
I love Mark.
He has taught me so much about quarterback play, and I pick his brain all the time. Like, should Mac have thrown this or should he thrown that? Tell me, Mark. Confirm my priors, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So I really appreciate Mark. He's the best.
Well, let's stick right on there while you're there. We saw some of your hand gestures with the NBC Boston Post and what was there. Tell us what we know you spend the time genuinely going through the play.
Yeah.
People throw around terms like the rookie wall and things like that. Obviously we didn't get to see anything in the first game. He was all run based. The second game, it was hard to know how much of that was the scheme, how much of that was, him playing from behind and the stress that's there, but it certainly hasn't ramped back up since then. There's been additional challenges. What are you seeing down the stretch here with Mac in that? Is it what teams are throwing at him? Is it the stress of him taking on more of the burden of the offensive load? Or is there really some magical rookie wall that he's just struggling to break through?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think it's the rookie wall per se in that respect, in terms of, okay, he's played, he only played 13 games at Alabama last year. Now he's playing his 18th game and he's tired, or he's hitting a rookie wall physically like that. What I do think that you see though, and what he's, I think, learning at the NFL game, is that you don't get away with mistakes at this level like you do in college. Like, when you don't confirm your read post snap and you think that Xavier Howard's bailing at the line of scrimmage, but then all of a sudden he's actually sitting in the flat, that's a pick six in the NFL. Whereas in college, maybe it's just oops, let's live and play another down type of play versus a all-pro cornerback breaking on your pass to Jacoby Myers. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see with Mac, because when I watch his tape against Miami, once he got over the pick six and kind of moved on from that, he made some really good downfield throws in that game. Hunter Henry had a couple from him. Jacoby Myers had a couple from him where they were able to push the ball down the field. The other thing that I would say, along with consistency, I think that's the biggest thing with the first one, is with the NFL, and he talks about just staying with his progressions a lot of the time as something that he harps on. And I think at the NFL level, you have to do that every single play. You can't just do that one play a drive or 5 plays a drive. If you go on a 10-play drive, you have to be on for 10 plays. It's not like you can just pick and choose. I think Josh Allen's gone through some of those things before in the past as well, where he throws these turnovers where you're just like, what are you thinking? Like, that's how we all reacted to the Howard interception on Sunday. It was like, what the heck was he looking at? He was standing right there the whole time. The other thing I would say, maybe it started in Indianapolis in the first half a little bit, but teams have figured out a little bit of a blueprint. I wouldn't say that there's one way that teams are getting to it. Like, Buffalo played all that inside leverage man coverage on third down. They cut off the middle of the field routes. They made them beat them outside the numbers. That was the Bills' strategy. I don't know if the Colts and the Dolphins necessarily use that strategy exactly against Mac Jones, but clearly everybody recognizes that this is an offense that wants to run a couple different concepts. They want to run dig routes, they want to run crossing patterns, and they want to stress the middle of the field with multiple guys threatening inside, right? So they'll run like a drive concept where they'll clear it out and then they'll run the dig route through it, or maybe they'll run double dig where they have 2 dig routes and you have to put the robber in stress. Like, does the robber help to the inside dig or does he help to the outside dig? Those are the types of plays that they like to run a lot, especially on third down against man coverage. And I do think that there's a little bit of a blueprint or of a tell that that's kind of where they're at. So I wonder if maybe some of that has to do with having a rookie quarterback and the fact that at this point in time, maybe he doesn't have the ability to run 17 different things on third down quite yet. He only has the ability to run 10 things on third down or 5 things on third down, whatever that number is. And these great defensive coaches and these smart football teams with good coaching staffs are able to scout the Patriots and say, man, they really only run like 4 or 5 third down passing concepts. So if we're ready for those 4 or 5 third down plays, then we're going to be in pretty good shape. So I think that there's a little bit of a blueprint out there right now on Mac.
Yeah, and that's if you can get them into those third and passing situations, right? Because they're good on third and short. I got a question for you about, two players that weren't in this last matchup, in Nelson Aguilar and Ramondre Stevenson. I have a little bit more concern about Stevenson being back. I think that mix of Harris and Stevenson is a real tough mix for the Bills and the physicality that they present. And we've heard from Leonard Fournette
especially at -2 at 11 o'clock at night
absolutely.
in the fourth quarter.
We know Belichick would love nothing but to pound the ball and have those two back keep pounding. We heard Leonard Fournette talk about, hey, we saw on tape the lack of physicality and tackling from the Bills, and that we wanted to exploit that. But Aguilar too, talk about both these guys, because I think Aguilar, while Mac Jones doesn't have the big arm downfield, you still have to account for a vertical threat. You can't just leave him out there. It presents a different challenge than we saw in the last matchup. How do both these guys, getting those guys back into this offense, do something different than what we saw in the last matchup for the Patriots in this matchup?
Yeah, Nelson Aguilar, I think, is a really good one to bring up, and I'll get to Mondre in a second. But with Aguilar in particular, you look at Mac Jones's passing numbers with Nelson Aguilar on the field versus without Nelson Aguilar on the field, and there's a staggering difference in efficiency and production. With Nelson Aguilar out there, he's averaging 7.7 yards per attempt. Without Nelson Aguilar, it's 6.1 yards per attempt. And now a lot of that now is that Buffalo game, right? A lot of those numbers are inflated by the Bills game. But I think what you see is when Aguilar is out there, he is a professional deep threat. So teams cannot play him single man coverage. Like when the Patriots in week 16, they had N'Keal Harry in Aguilar's role. And Buffalo didn't care. They were like, all right, he's not going to run by us. If Mac Jones throws a pop fly to him at some point and he has a contested catch down the field like he did against Indianapolis, what's he going to do? What's he going to do that once, maybe twice if the Patriots are lucky, but it's not going to be consistent offense. When you watch the tape of the Patriots against Miami, you see the safety running over the top with Aguilar. You see them having to occupy the post with Nelson Aguilar running the deep pattern, and he runs that deep post. Hunter Henry runs a crossing route, and all of a sudden they flood the deep third, and it's 35 yards to Hunter Henry. Those are the types of plays that Nelson Aguilar creates for this offense, and I think that makes their offense way, way more explosive, even if the ball is not actually going to him. I always joke about it on our show because people in New England are all over Aguilar because his box score stats are terrible. I mean, especially based off of what they're paying him. But I always say that his clear out game is awesome. Like he draws attention. Yeah, he draws attention. He takes people up the field. He helps them space the field, right? I think a big problem what they had in week 16 against Buffalo is when you really go back and you watch the coaches tape of that game, everybody's on top of each other, right? Because N'Keal Harry, his clear out just isn't effective. It's just slow, it's plodding, and he's not actually taking anybody with him. So I think that's a big reason why he's so effective. And with Ramondre Stevenson, I think in some respects, what makes this so what makes him so good is how he complements Damian Harris and how both of them can really keep each other fresh and they can, at some points in the season, they were going drive per drive, right? Like one drive's a Damian Harris drive, the next drive's a Ramondre drive, and they were just swapping off because they are so interchangeable.
Saw some of them in the first game.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say about Ramondre that maybe is a little bit, Damian Harris, I think, might have some better straight line explosiveness. Like he can take that toss 60 yards to the house and explode through the hole and get those bigger gainers like that. Ramondre is slipperier. He's more elusive. He's got more jump cut ability, and he's got more ability to kind of jump out of a tackle and then hit the edge. And those are the types of plays that they get out of Ramondre Stevenson. So two really good offensive weapons that weren't in that game in week 16 for the Patriots. And this is not an offense that can be missing offensive weapons. They don't have enough number one guys. They don't have a Tyreek Hill or a Devontae Adams or a Stephon Diggs. So if they are missing some of these complementary pieces, they're an offense that needs to add all of the sum of the parts to get the whole pie. And if they don't have them all together, then the puzzle doesn't fit together as well.
I know. I was obviously not. I wasn't petrified of the passing game as a whole. I was very nervous about that one play action deep shot where, hey, you get the run going, you get the run going, you get the run going. They really start to sell out. And then now having Aguilar back, that's where one of my concerns is being able to hit that. And speaking of getting that running game going, I know we saw Harris and Stevenson both get dinged a little bit during that Dolphins game. They're limited. It seems like they're okay. Any concern with those two coming into this game?
No, I'd be a little bit more concerned about the health of the offensive line than about Ramondre and Damian Harris. Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, I would say, is, to put it optimistically, is maybe 50-50 to play in this game. He's got hip and ankle injuries. He left the Miami game early and did not return to the second half of that game. So I don't know. That one is tough, but I think the good news is with Ramondre and Damian Harris, if one of those guys goes down, the other guy is just as good. So I think that they would have one or the other no matter what. But yeah, with the offensive line at left tackle, and the Patriots have been really reluctant to shake up the offensive line a ton. When guys go out, they just sub one guy in. They don't want to move people around.
Oh, yeah. We're not big fans of that. Our solution is always, hey, don't worry, we got it. We'll move these three guys around and cause three changes because of one guy going out. Yeah, we're not.
So you don't. Do you think Trent will? You don't think Trent will move over?
That's what I had heard. Someone projected Trent Brown over to left tackle, and when you back in at right tackle.
But then that takes away your jumbo.
Changes. Yeah, look,
package
personally, that's their best five, right? Like Trent Brown, Ted Karras, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, Mike Onwenu from left to right is their best five if Isaiah Wynn can't go. But like I was saying, the Patriots really harp on continuity. That's a big message in their offensive line room. It's something that they really stress with that group. So like you guys were saying, the Buffalo Bills might put, one guy goes down, we're going to move this guy to guard, this guy to center, that guy to tackle, and move everybody around. The Patriots say Isaiah Wynn goes down, his replacement's Justin Herron, who's their backup third tackle. He's going in at left tackle. Everybody else is staying exactly where they are. Now, this is a playoff game. This is one and done, win or go home. So maybe that changes a little bit. Trent Brown was talked to us today. He was asked a couple of different ways, a couple of different times, if maybe they're going to try him out over on the left side, and he wouldn't bite because, Belichick will kill him if he tells the Bills that he's going to play over on the left side. So we'll see, but that's their best five. And that if the Patriots are going to come out and their game plan is to play like they did in week 13 and run the ball 40 times again, and they got Trent and Onwenu on their two tackles, I mean, that is a lot of beef for that offensive line. So whether it's the 6-0 line with Herron in there or they put the two big guys at the tackle spots, they're going to get to some beef somehow.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed in that last game too, even without Aguilar and without Stevenson, like we were talking about here, Hunter Henry had a chance to have a game in that last game, and Mac just missed him. People brought up the lack of statistics from him. I'm expecting them to have seen that in the film and really attack that. Do you think that Hunter Henry could have been having a much better season than he's had? Because every time I've watched the Patriots, he's open all the time. Like this guy is as advertised, and Mac Jones has missed a lot. Obviously, they had the success early on in the red zone and getting him those touchdowns, but he should be having a much better season. Are they going to try to exploit that in Buffalo? Buffalo's struggled not as much this year with tight ends, but he's probably the best tight end they faced this year outside of Kelsey.
Yeah, it's a good question because I think the big thing that you look at with both these tight ends is I think when they made those signings and we came into the season, especially watching those two guys in training camp when they were just killing it out there. And the Patriots have some good safeties, right? This is not a group of safeties for New England that are terrible against tight ends. I think they're actually still one of the best teams in the league at guarding tight ends with Adrian Phillips, with Kyle Duggar. I have multiple guys you can throw at them. And Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith were making plays all over the field during the summer. Then we got into the season, and Henry's red zone production obviously translated during the regular season, and he has a flash of big plays here or there like he did last week against Miami, but the target volume wasn't there. And with Johnny Smith, it's just been a disaster from the jump in the regular season, but also not feeding the ball to those guys in general, either one of them. So I do wonder now that we get into the postseason, speaking on Henry, Johnny, I'll believe it when I see it. When
Right.
Jonnu Smith has a big game, like I really will. But maybe Jonnu Smith is one of those guys in a game like this where Buffalo is kind of not, he's an afterthought and they can sneak him up the field at some point in time. But in terms of him popping off, I'll believe it when I see it. With Henry, I wonder if now we see the 10-15 target game for Hunter Henry now that we're into the postseason. I know one thing that was really important to Henry was playing a full season because he's had all the injury issues in his career for a while now. He's been kind of labeled an injury prone player, and I think he wanted to make it the full year. Now that he's made it a full year, maybe we see his target share increase significantly in the postseason because he's clearly their best guy to go up against man coverage specifically. Where they get man, I mean, Jacoby Myers has been the volume guy against man coverage,
Right.
but the most effective route runner and the most effective receiver getting open against man is definitely Hunter Henry. So I hope that they start feeding him a little bit more now that we've made it to this point and it's win or go home. There's not really there's no more bullets to save for Hunter Henry, right? I mean, we're not in week 6 anymore. So hopefully we do see that more.
When one last question before we get to your prediction, Aaron had brought up and you were talking about that heavy set, the 6-0 line, and obviously that worked to tremendous value in the Monday night game. Then you saw the Bills counter by having a special defensive sub package that when the Patriots went 6, they brought in AJ Klein. They not only brought in AJ Klein, they brought in Saran Neal at the outside tackle spot. So now you're talking about a 6 foot, 210, 215 pound outside corner who's our gunner, and then a big, heavy third linebacker. I'm curious, what is the counterpunch to the counterpunch? I'm curious, do we see maybe more play action passing out of the heavy set? Do they just dare them and say, hey, no, we can still go strength on strength? How do you think they might play that, where that it obviously didn't solve it? Harris still had 3 rushing touchdowns in the last game, but it wasn't the 240 yards rushing.
Yeah, I love the counter punches in this game because I think the Patriots punched first in the Monday night game with the run game. Buffalo adjusted a little bit in part 2, and now the Patriots have to make a whole host of adjustments for part 3 if they're going to have a chance in this game on Saturday night. In terms of how they adjust in the running game, I think one of the things that you saw a lot in that game in week 16 was they knew that the linebackers on the Buffalo Bills were going to be super reactive to the pullers, right? Because of how badly they got beat by G-lead and counter and toss and those types of plays in the first game. Every single time the Patriots ran a puller, Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano and Klein were like, we're coming downhill at this thing immediately. And the Patriots were able to then hit some cutbacks, right? They would set it up to the play side and then they'd cut it back through to the backside. Damian Harris had his biggest run of the game off a counter where the linebackers came screaming up to the tight end and the guard pulling, and then they hit it backside. So I think that those are some of the things that they'll try to do is like almost false pull, right? Where you're pulling to not really hit that as the point of attack, but you're actually pulling to just influence the linebackers over there and then try to hit it on the backside. Patriots have had a lot of success with those types of schemes and cutting those runs back because teams are so worried about Shaq Mason pulling through the hole or Ted Karras pulling through the hole that these guys are just screaming up to those pullers. But yeah, this chess match is going to be a lot of fun because Buffalo's pass defense just absolutely suffocated the Patriots last time, and they played that inside leverage. They played man when the Patriots were expecting them to play zone, and everything was backwards for New England in that game. They just couldn't figure it out. So I'm fascinated to see how Josh McDaniels schemes that this time around. And then what does McDermott do? Does McDermott still sit in man, or does he adjust back to some of his more zone stuff? So these coaches have so many options. There's so many options with these staffs, and it's going to be fun to see what they go with.
It's funny you say that because it's really, I think we fight so much internally here on Bill's Twitter about the run game and stuff. And really is, if a team can get somebody to just take that extra step or just that, to bite an extra little bit, especially with some of the gap stuff, and then you're done. That's where you give up the big run. It's really slim margins between a play being a 3-yard play and springing for a 15, 20-yard plus run in the NFL. And when we're watching, it doesn't feel like that. Everyone's like, oh, Tremaine Edmonds sucks. He missed that gap. when really it's like, hey, you only have to be off by a little bit for them to take advantage. So I love that answer. All right, it's going to be cold. We know it.
Yes.
We're hearing from Boston that we might see Brian Hoyer. Nobody knows. Can you give us, what is your, we always put you on the spot. Give us a rundown, game prediction, how this is going to go, and then give us a score here.
Well, I think with we talked a lot about the offense. I guess to wrap it, I'll talk a little bit about the Patriots defense. And I think the biggest thing, though, from a big picture perspective with the Patriots is I'm not entirely sure that they have the buy-in that they had at one point in this season. They lose 3 out of their last 4 down the stretch. I'm not like getting crazy and saying that Bill Belichick's losing the locker room. Like that. But do they still believe in themselves as a Super Bowl contender? Do they still feel like they can compete at the highest level? Because I look at against Buffalo and I say, okay, even if you beat the Bills, do they think that they could beat Indy or they could beat the Chiefs? Or Indy's not in there. I meant Tennessee or the Chiefs or Cincy, right? In a playoff game and actually win multiple playoff games on this run. Do they still have that buy-in? Because you lose this game to Miami, they blow the doors off of Jacksonville and they beat them 50-10. And all of us wrote after that game that could be the game that they got their mojo back. That could be the game that they got some momentum to carry into the postseason. And then they lay an egg in Miami. So I'm just not entirely sure which Patriots team we're going to get on Saturday night. And if they've let go of the rope, honestly, on this season in a lot of ways, because I think a lot of people, including myself, if the Patriots lose on Saturday night, I would sit here and say that their season was a success. They brought in a rookie quarterback. They won 10 games. They made the postseason. They added a bunch of new pieces. And I wonder if maybe they also feel like they've kind of already succeeded. And I'm not, I hope not, but maybe that's where we're going with this. Defensively, that was one of the worst games I have seen Bill Belichick's defense have since I've started covering the team. Now, granted, I didn't cover the team for the Super Bowl in 2017 against the Eagles, but I was obviously a fan at the time, and it felt a lot like that game where they just could not get a stop. Like they just couldn't do anything right in that game. That game in Week 16, I mean, they never punted. That's never happened to a Belichick defense. So the good news is, if you're the Patriots, is I think you look at that Week 16 game plan, you take it out to the dumpster, you set it on fire, and you say, let's never use that ever again against Josh Allen. That's the good news, is you know exactly what not to do against Josh Allen. The question now is, can you go out there and execute what you have to actually do to stop Allen? And every time I put Bill's tape on, I see 2 things. One, if you play man coverage against them, you're good luck. Just good luck, because not only can Diggs beat you in man, but Allen is he's just so darn good that he just puts the ball in spots for guys to beat man coverage. And the Patriots can't cover Isaiah McKenzie. So what are they going to do with that whole situation? Because if you're going to double or bracket or close off Isaiah McKenzie with the robber or something like that, and then Stephon Diggs is one-on-one against J.C. Jackson, then he's just going to pop off. Jackson's a good corner, but Diggs is obviously a tremendous player. So I look at their matchups, and man, especially if Jalen Mills can't play in this game and doesn't get cleared for protocols, they can't play man. I mean, they don't have the horses to play man against Buffalo. So playing zone, I think, is critical. But if the Patriots play zone, they have to do 2 things. They either have to disguise the zone, or they have to make sure that they keep Josh Allen in the pocket and pressure him into making quicker throws. If they allow him to run around like he did at Gillette a few weeks ago, then you see how much he can shred zone. So get the ball out of his hand quickly, play disguise zone coverage, make him force throws into coverage. That's your best bet against a quarterback like Allen. And hopefully Bill Belichick knows that. I would think he does. And hopefully the Patriots can go out there and execute it. But again, I still come back to it when I try to make a score prediction and things like that. I still come back to the fact that I just don't know which Patriots team is going to show up on Saturday night. And we
feel the same way about our team, just so you know.
Yeah, which is kind of weird, right? I guess maybe both teams are a little bit
high variance
and Hyde. Yeah. But the other question that I had for you guys, I guess, is do you feel like there's any pressure on the Bills in this game?
I feel all the pressure is on the Bills.
Yeah, because
way more so than New England.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the one thing that, because the Patriots have been terrible in the first quarter, awful in the first quarter all year long. Their defense is 28th in the league in EPA per play in the first quarter. They're getting their doors blown off in the first quarter. They've been outscored 38-7 in the first quarter in this 4-game stretch that they've had, even including the Jacksonville game. They were only up 7-0 after the first quarter against Jacksonville. So slow starts have been a huge issue, but I do wonder if some of that that nerves for the Bills, if there is a little bit of a slow burn to this game, and both teams are kind of come out a little bit sloppy or a little bit tight on their opening possessions. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about the pressure on Buffalo, because everyone, I assume, is expecting the Bills to take that next step, right? You make the title game last year. Now it's kind of like Super Bowl or bust almost in Buffalo, I would think.
To your point, like you saying, if they lose this game, if the Patriots lose this game, that you still feel like this season's a success. I'll tell you right now, if the Bills lose this game, nobody in Buffalo is saying that this season was a success, right? I think maybe I'm in a camp of, if they don't get to the Super Bowl, you can still find a success in making the playoffs and going on a run, but they have to win a few games here in the playoffs for that to happen even. I think the expectations were too high, even though they didn't meet expectations in the regular season. You finished the season pretty strong, even though it kind of stumbled through some bad teams on the way. The pressure is totally on Buffalo here. That I have them going to the AFC Championship game again this year, and if they don't, sort of meet that goal, I don't know that it's a success. They're putting up championship caliber banners all over the facility. They're in that next phase past playoff caliber, where, like, for you guys, it's playoff caliber, and those things do worry me. I think desperate teams or teams that can play a little bit more loose, that's a real thing that isn't quantified. You can't quantify that in any type of statistic, that where they can come out and maybe blitz a little bit more or run some different stuff, where it's like, hey, what do we have to lose? We're here, this is good enough, and we can play a little bit more loose than these other guys who are playing tight because the pressure's on them. So I think that's a great question to pin back at us, because all the pressure's here on us in Buffalo, and you're home in front of your fans.
And now the one thing I'm going to cling to is a piece of that is our expectations are now drive by drive dominance. The expectation of the Bills fan base is
welcome to being a Super Bowl contender.
Every single offensive drive has to be a touchdown. Every single defensive drive has to be a 3 and out.
Yeah.
And anytime you don't score, what's wrong? Daboll's an idiot. Let's fire him.
During the game, it's bad.
Anytime that there's a scoring drive given up, oh my gosh, what is wrong with it? We can't win a Super Bowl if we're giving up scoring drives. This is obscene. And when you step back, the last 4 games, I think most people would say they've kind of stumbled down the stretch. Well, the last 4 games are wins by 13, 12, 14, 17.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to cling to is, I think our perception of struggling is because our expectations are, well, if it's not 40-0, they're not good enough, and it's not doing enough. And the fact that they're still coming into the playoffs on a 4-game double-digit 2-score winning streak is that I think they're clicking and playing a little better than people realize, specifically in defense, where you're talking about down the stretch here. It's been games of giving up 15, 6, 14, 14, 21, 15, 10. That is championship caliber defense, and what they're doing, ending the season 5 sacks and 9 sacks. That's what I'm going to hold on to, in that, hey, it has been perfect. There have been some moments where we'll be like, come on, you should be beating the Jets worse than this. Come on, you should be beating the Falcons worse than this. But then eventually they do. And I think that just those moments that they force you to think about it, even if it's just for a 5-minute stretch in the third quarter, it makes you think it. And then you don't really get rid of that thought to realize, oh, yeah, they won by double digits and covered the spread. It's probably fine. Yeah. So that's the part where I think we have such high expectations as a fan base. The first time we're experiencing consistent success, we're just not used to this and being in the position of, okay, it's actually okay.
Yeah. To be fair, DVOA variance has still been record setting this year for the Bills.
Yeah, this is what it was like for 20 years here. And I know that sounds like poor Evan, that he had to deal with all the winning for 20 years. But that's what it was like here, was that winning wasn't good enough. When you played the likes of the Atlanta Falcons and the New York Jets, winning was not, you couldn't just win that game.
Right.
You had to win. And it's almost like Nick Saban talks about it with Alabama all the time, where you have to win by 40 points for everybody to be satisfied with what you put out there. And then even at times, even with Mac this year, at times, like people are nitpicking the Jags game. They win 50-10, and I write a column afterwards saying, well, yeah, I mean, they won 50-10, but this and this doesn't really reflect a championship caliber team. And I look at those things, and that's because, and you guys, I'm sure, will are feeling the same things now. You can tell what it looks like. You can tell what it feels like. You can tell the product and what the level of execution is. And against Jacksonville, when you watch that tape back of Mac Jones, he's digging and dunking his way down the field against the Jags. And it's like, yeah, against the Jags, this is going to work. But when the Bills, who have the number one pass defense in the league, know that all you're going to do is dink and dunk down the field, and all of a sudden you can't do that because they're taking it away, what else can you do? And that was sort of the conundrum that I had with that Jacksonville game. And I look, that's the blessing and the curse of the success that the Bills have been having, is that now you really, it's not good enough to just win by a touchdown. You got to win by 4 against an Atlanta or against the Jets. And I think the one thing that on the Patriots, back to the pressure thing a little bit, that I would put my, kind of hang my hat on if I was the Pats, is going back to that Monday night game. I was there in Buffalo that night in the windstorm. It was terrible. And now I'm not looking forward to being there in single digits on Saturday night.
Yeah,
that's another first world problem. I get to go to a playoff game. The Damian Harris touchdown, the way that the whole stadium deflated after that play was very, very telling for the rest of the game. And because of the way that the wind conditions were, I almost felt like when Damian Harris broke that touchdown that the game was over. Even though it was 8-0 in the first quarter or whatever it was, I was like, that might be game. Like they might have just won on one score because of the conditions. And in this game, if I'm the Patriots, the Pats are notorious for deferring, right? They win the coin toss, they defer to the second half. But because the defense has struggled so much in the first quarter and with opening scripts, and the Bills can certainly put together an opening script that's going to give the Patriots problems, whether it's going off of what Miami just did with some of the RPOs and things like that, or it's just Josh Allen being Josh Allen. It's going to be tough to stop that opening drive with Dable having the first 10 plays scripted and knowing exactly what he's going to call against Belichick. So maybe the Patriots flip it and take the ball this time and try to get that 7-0 lead early on and try to put even more pressure on the Bills to now dig out of a little bit of an early hole. That's the card that I would play if I was Belichick this week. When I go into the meeting room with the players, I would say, we're playing with house money. Like this is not, we're not supposed to be here. Nobody's picking us in this game. Everybody's going to pick Buffalo. They got the better quarterback. All we got is noodle arm Mac here. Like we're not the team that's supposed to go on this run. The Bills are. And maybe they can muster that up in that direction, because I have a tough time, especially with some of the injuries that they have on the defensive side of the ball and Mills in protocol and all this stuff. I have a tough time figuring out a great way that the Patriots actually win this game. I can figure out a way that the Patriots are competitive in this game, but actually winning the game, I think, is really a tough hurdle for me to overcome. And just looking at who covers McKenzie in the slot, because I know he hasn't played as much since the Patriots game, but I would be shocked if Dable doesn't throw McKenzie back out there and start running.
At least to find out. Yeah, right. You at least have to force them.
Yeah. Will Bill continue to put Miles Bryant on this guy?
Yeah.
We dare you to do it again.
Yeah. So I would assume that he's going to see a lot. I think he has 3 targets in the last 2 games since having 11 against the Patriots. I still think that McKenzie plays a ton in this game against the Pats and runs all those crossing routes again and torches them to death, I'm sure. And then you look at Jackson, JC is not really had a great rap on Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs has had his number more times than not, except for the windstorm game, which probably would have gone a different way if there wasn't 50-mile-an-hour winds in Buffalo that night. So I just look at this Buffalo passing attack. I see too many weapons there. The Patriots are going to have to be really well connected on the back end in zone coverage and probably put a decent amount of pressure on Josh Allen to be able to mitigate this Bills team, because the Pats, they got to win a game 24-21. They can't let this game get into the 30s like it did in week 16. Otherwise, they're going to be in trouble.
So we appreciate it, man. Let the people know where you can find all your good work and what you're going to be expecting going into coming into this trade. How are you going to keep warm at this game?
Well, yeah, the warm part is going to be interesting. And I hope that I have to go out on the field pregame and postgame to do stand-ups. And I'm concerned that my camera is just going to like freeze and I'm not going to be able to do it. So I've already warned my boss, like, if I'm going to like get frostbite from standing out there shooting videos, I'm not going to do it. So just to let you know, like, I'm not that dedicated. No. But yeah, you can follow me at Easy Lazar on Twitter, CLNSmedia.com, Patriots Press Pass. We do all sorts of film breakdown coverage, just like you guys do here, really analyze the game from an X's and O's perspective. So even if you're a Bills fan, if you come on over after the game, I'll tell you what we saw and what we thought from our perspective of what went wrong for the Patriots, most likely. And then we can have a good time talking about it. So Patriots Press Pass, we have a ton of Bills Mafia in our live stream chat all the time. I love it. They're always coming in and they're trolling
we're like that. We're like that.
Our Patriots fans, it's great. And they always try to start stuff and everything, but it's a lot of fun. But I copped out of the score prediction, but I do think the Bills are going to win this game.
Awesome. Yeah. And even leading up to the game, you talked about the post game stuff that you guys do, but I'm always, especially on Patriots Week, checking out your work and getting ready for the game, even though it's an early game and that it's on Saturday this week. Feels like it's we still have so much time left. So get over to Evan
long week for already Wednesday.
It feels,
I don't like the Saturday game. I think it's a disadvantage for both teams to be on a short week, especially one thing I don't think the league didn't think about when it came to this was the COVID angle, because and look, this is selfish because Jalen Mills is one of the players that's in protocol, but if that game is on Sunday, then he plays.
Yeah.
But because
or if we had the Monday night game, the Monday night slot, there's a much higher probability.
Yeah. But because he's the idea of him potentially testing out by Saturday is very, very lofty. And same thing if one of the players on the Bills or on the Patriots pops up with COVID today or tomorrow, forget about it. So that's one thing I wish that they had thought about a little bit more with these Saturday games was,
they thought about was money.
Now we're in trouble. If a star player pops up with COVID, we can't test him out of the protocol in time for a Saturday game.
Yeah. All they were thinking about was how do we get games on for the Nickelodeon Wildcard.
Who can we dump
slime
on?
Yeah.
But no, we appreciate
you, man.
Hoping for a very fun, entertaining game. Safe travels and be safe and stay warm. We are going to be warm in our houses watching the game. You enjoy the stadium.
Very warm.
But we'll talk soon, man. And looking forward to a great game.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. So obviously, two of our favorite people to be able to bring on and talk to, and it's such a weird game to be in position for, and what we're looking at here. And I know, I want to bring up our Uncle Jumbo's spotlight player, and I'm going to put two guys into this. We've seen an uptick in play, some of it that maybe even started in that Patriots game, but it's gotten better even since then, specifically with Harrison Phillips and Ed Oliver. I think they are the key to this game. I think that they have to have a really strong, disruptive game to hold the point of attack and to penetrate and to break up some of that stuff. And I think the two of them can really have a significant impact on the Patriots' ability to not only run the ball, but to hit play action off of the run, because pressure immediately in the quarterback's face is huge. A lot of stats floating around here out of the last 5 games. Harrison Phillips, 15 pressures. Ed Oliver, 14 pressures. Ed Oliver ended the season with 4 sacks in the last 4 games. Just a really strong trend for two guys at a critical spot. My player spotlight is the impact that I hope Harrison Phillips and Ed Oliver have in this game.
Yeah, if you watch that Miami game, Christian Wilkins, like, first of all, love Christian Wilkins. It's terrifying how good he's becoming for us in the future, but he destroyed the interior offensive line of the New England Patriots. And this is an offensive line that I've been giving praise to all year long. I think it is one of the better units. It's a big mauling unit in all of football, but I saw the way Christian Wilkins was able to disrupt in the middle of that field. And I don't know, I think Ed Oliver is in that, has that ability. They're different type of players, but with the way Harrison Phillips is playing and the way Ed Oliver is playing, the way they play together, I think that they can cause a lot of disruption in the middle there. And I think that, we talked to Mark last time in that first matchup, and he said, bring, the pressure from the edges. That's true. And Mac has done a good job of avoiding the pressure from the interior, but interior pressure always impacts quarterbacks the most. It's the biggest thing we know about football and in terms of pressure. So I want to see that. I agree with you. My only other here for Spotlight is because it didn't get mentioned by either Mark or Evan. And I was thinking of it the whole time when they were talking about the Bills' weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Dawson Knox. I think Dawson Knox in both these Patriots games, I saw him as a huge possible weapon, especially if he matches up against these linebackers. Say the safeties, you have to bring Duggar to spy Josh Allen, and they can't really use that type of athleticism against Knox. I think Knox has the potential for a big breakout game here at some point. We've seen the production in the red zone be something for him, but he's getting separation like no other person on the Bills right now. He's getting the yards after catch like nobody else on the Bills right now. I think if they are making this deep postseason run, we know the run game has to be important to it, but I think getting Dawson Knox involved, he, outside of Stephon Diggs, in my opinion, is the most consistent and the most explosive passing threat for the
really
Buffalo
might
Bills.
Be the next best athlete overall with how fast he is for his size.
Yeah,
and he's not as fast as maybe Gabe or McKenzie.
No,
out,
but he's got the mix of
his power and size and who covers him. It makes a huge difference.
And becoming a better route runner, finding zones, things like that.
Becoming a much better blocker.
Like, he's a legitimate weapon that I'd like to see maybe more involved in, sort of in the same way Evan was talking about Hunter Henry, getting him targeted. I don't know that I need 15 targets for Dawson Knox, but even
I wouldn't mind 6 or 8.
Yeah, 8 targets would be really fantastic. And the way that he can create some explosives that we've seen. So he's another guy that I think we ought to be spotlighting.
Yeah, one quick thing. I know Nick asked about it here, and it went around our Twitterverse a lot. People were asking about the potential signing for Shaq Lawson. I know guys that we know over at Trainwreck, Mookie, other people that we know went out pretty strongly there. We know where that came from, and we know it's because there's genuine interest in the group from Shaq Lawson and those guys in wanting to come back. I think there's an interest from the Bills.
Sure.
There's reasons
no rush for the Bills.
Yeah, there's reasons it hasn't happened. We don't know everything that goes into that. I think there were questions from, Shaq himself of who is he ready to play? That people asked him that when he was leaving the Jets, not specifically for the Bills. But when he was being released, was that for the future or was that to be able to play this year? So I know a lot of people have asked about that. I think obviously people jumped the gun on reporting it happening because obviously it didn't. So that wasn't accurate. I think the interest level was real. And I think there's a possibility that something could happen down the line. But I think you were pretty careful to tell people, hey, even if this happens, we're not adding TJ Watt or Nick Bosa here.
Yeah,
like
right.
it, maybe it's a slight bump in the backup rotational run defense guy. But this isn't some huge swing. So, just a quick, kind of helping explain. I know some people thought that the folks that ran with that looked bad. I think, the information
it's a tough situation.
The information they got wasn't false, but I think maybe it was one-sided and that everything hadn't been vetted out and that we'll see where that goes in the future. It probably was never as urgent or immediate as what it was thought to be, that, it's for this game to get him on board. I don't think that was ever the case.
No, and even if, I love Shaq Lawson. I love what he would bring to the locker room,
good dude, great
to
energy.
team. I'd like to have him for the 2022 Bills going forward. Like, I think he would be a nice rotational piece of the line, especially I'm assuming you're going to lose Mario Addison, Jerry Hughes here in the next year. At least one of those guys are not going to be back with you. So I'd love to have rotation there. But yeah, I never, when I heard the news, I wasn't thinking really much help for this playoffs. I like this defensive line rotation the way it is, and they're playing better than they've played all year long. So I didn't understand the, rush to, hey, let's bring him in and it's going to be somehow some vast improvement from what we've seen already. I don't see that. So hopefully they do get something done here towards the end of the season, get him in this building, because I think he's will be a positive. But yeah, I'm not on Shaq Lawson watch at this point.
And one other question, I was scrolling through trying to find it so I could post the exact question, but I thought it was a good one, asking about, we talked about if they put Miles Bryant out there one-on-one, or if they pivot to more zone, what are we going to see? What do you expect in this game in this percentage split of snaps out of the slot between Cole Beasley and Isaiah McKenzie?
This one's tough. I still think they're going to go higher towards Beasley. So last post-game show, I kind of said, like, I was frustrated that over the last 3 games, we didn't see, I thought that was really the opportunity to see if what you captured against New England with Isaiah McKenzie, with Beasley hurt, if that was going to be something that was, you were able to replicate going forward, right? Like, you have these 3 games against inferior opponents that you should be able to feel comfortable enough winning where you can get this guy out there. I was a little frustrated that we didn't do that. And then kind of coupled that in with the Jets game, where in the targets that he was given, Beasley looked like he wasn't getting the step on guys. Like, there was close coverage. He wasn't getting a step on guys. He had a drop. Like, it felt like maybe Beasley, all this rumor, all this narrative that I'm hearing online that Beasley's lost a step and that he's not the same player. Well, I'll tell you what, I went back and watched every Cole Beasley snap in that last game. It looked at data because I was trying to find out, is it true? Has he lost a step? Because one, I think that's a little overstated because he's not an explosive guy. He's never been. He
never was.
Yeah. So I don't know what step.
Guy.
Yeah, what step there was to lose, right? He makes his living off route running. So that's what I was looking for. Like, is he able to create separation with his routes? And it shows up on film still, guys. He is still able to get open. You could actually see Beasley was visibly frustrated at times. He was open a number of times, and Josh went other places with the ball, places he shouldn't have gone. There was that one that went to Dawson Knox. It was a bad throw to Dawson Knox on a 3rd down. It almost got intercepted over the middle of the field. Cole Beasley beat his man one-on-one with nobody over the top. He had it. It was I brought the play up to Eric, and Eric was like, oh yeah, because Eric's freaking unbelievable recall. He was like, he ran that route in Denver 3 years ago or something and took it for a touchdown. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember that. But you could see the visible frustration.
And so I'm sure Cole let him hear about it in film study too.
Yeah, right. And so I do think, I'm not sure. I don't know if it'll be 65-35 like we're seeing there, but I think Cole still has the lion's share of those snaps. Yeah. He's still a reliable target. He's still a guy that is getting open. And people think that, his production dipped. So did Stephon Diggs. I think everybody's production dipped this past year, but he still had 82 catches. He's never been a yak guy. So that wasn't going to be there either way. But he's a guy that can move the chains. He can keep things going. He can be a trusted security blanket. So I don't see Isaiah McKenzie coming out and having the type of game that he had against the Patriots the first time. But I do think he needs to be utilized and manufacture some looks for him, especially if they're going to put Miles Bryant out on him.
If nothing else, he needs to be put out there simply to prove, are you going to switch the zone?
Sure.
Because if you're not, we're going to have him race Miles Bryant to the other side of the field.
Or like,
good luck.
They were like, Evan was talking about with Aguilar, like, create some of that stress on your defense to just put him out there on a crosser and pull some guys and pull attention so that you can hit Dawson Knox underneath or Gabe Davis.
And all it takes is, because eventually you're going to have that safety over here. I'll see if I can do it with my fingers. So, because it's opposite with the mirrored camera. So when McKenzie runs
our poor podcast listeners,
the drag, and obviously so much of that was just drag and drag and drag and drag and shallow crosser after shallow crosser. Well, eventually their safety is going to come up on that. And what you do is you start running that drag, and then you get to the seam and you turn it upfield with a double move and get behind that safety. So that's what they need to be ready for. Can they pivot if they start to bring McCourty down into that area to cut off the drag? can they cut behind him and be able to hit a big shot over the top?
Yeah,
So
or
we'll
get
see
a
where that-
one-on-one look with a Gabe Davis who
Yeah,
has
correct.
speed that people don't even see. That he's a real downfield threat because they're going to bracket or do something to help Diggs. I think that JC Jackson man on Diggs is not. I think they've learned that that's not good. If they want to do that, I'm happy to do that all day. But
Cal asking the real questions here. Question for the end. Rich Eisen calls Josh Allen the Buffalorian. I like it. Brett Coleman today coined the Angel of Death. And I know PFT commenter ran with that as well.
Yeah.
And Brett this came up in the scenario of, hey, they were asking Brett about Brian Daboll's candidacy for other offenses. Hey, I think that a lot of Bills fans are too harsh on Daboll. He's valuable. He's doing good things. But when your quarterback is the angel of death, it does cover an awful lot of flaws in your game. And everybody ran with that with that one. So I can't lie. It's not the most family friendly nickname. Like there's some people who would be put off by that. I think it's badass.
I'm off-putting.
Yeah, you're off-putting.
Yeah,
and,
so
we
whatever.
tolerate you. So I think the Angel of Death is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If people want to run with that one, I'll support it.
Yeah, I think Rich Eisen called him the Mandalorian, and then Buffalo people took it and ran with the Buffalorian or whatever. I actually think that that's a super overrated show. I didn't like the show at all. It's a corny Western with sci-fi undertones.
I've heard people tried the General.
Yeah.
And I know, that one's okay. There hasn't been anything that stuck so far, but the Angel of Death has a ring to it. I've never heard any athlete ever called that.
Yeah.
So that's something that I could hang on to if
I could do it. Yeah, I mean, I have no words when every single week this kid, man, I had friends over for the last game and that throw.
Steven here confirming, he calls it Mandalorian, not Buffalorian.
Yeah, the throw where he stiff arms Quinnen and he's got a guy hanging on him, and we were just like I'm so many years into this now, and like he's still just blowing me away every single week.
You've upset the chat. I didn't want to go into it about Aaron not thinking the Mandalorian was that good, but
it's so overrated.
We'll talk about that another day.
Terrible dialogue in that show. The music was the best part.
Yeah, yes, excellent.
The score of that show was probably the best part, but it was boring, slow. It's a terrible show.
So all right, we've come to the end here. It's playoff week. You, my friend, have organized an amazing playoff extravaganza on Friday night. We have an all-star list of guests joining us, so make sure you guys are ready. Friday night, 8 to 10. We've got guys coming from Lockdown Bills with Joe Marino. We've got guys coming from Buffalo Fanatics with Clay Troya and Kendall Mursky. We've got everybody in the Cover One lineup jumping aboard. It's going to be just a laundry list of guests, guy after guy jumping on. So make sure you join us Friday night. But let's wrap this up.
Yep.
What are you expecting? What's your score?
So I do think, as much as I've been naysaying that the weather is not going to be that much of a problem this time, I do think cold conditions matter. I'm not trying to scoff at it.
It's not the same as playing in 60-degree weather.
I'm not trying to scoff at it, that it's like, it's not, they're not playing in a dome. It's going to be cold. That's going to have some impact on this game. I do think that, I don't think the Patriots are as good as the Bills. I think they present some matchup issues. I do. Yep. And I think that they have a good enough coaching staff to sort of work some of those matchup issues. And even though the Bills dominated that game, and we could have the what ifs of this last game with the Patriots, the what ifs, if they didn't drop the touchdown, they could have probably scored 40 plus points. But at the end of the day, that game, towards the end of the game, was close to being within a one-score game.
Because it's saying all the excuses that I made of how it could have been 48-13. If J.C. Jackson doesn't drop that interception, they could have taken a 2-point lead.
2-point lead at
4 minutes to go.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that game was a little closer than it felt, even though we celebrated a blowout victory. But the other thing about that game, and then we're looking, hey, we can just replicate that type of success. Josh Allen played flawless in that game.
His best game was
outside of that almost JC Jackson drop.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's going to be able to replicate that twice. Like that was maybe his best game of his entire career. I don't know that you're going to.
Eric said he thought it was the best game he had seen.
I think so.
Allen's career.
And maybe he can have a similar good game, but I don't think he's going to top what he did the last time. Nice thing is the Bills' run game has picked up since then. So I do think that the Bills still present enough problems to get over this hump, and they have more talent than the Patriots do. And the Patriots are, we talk about it a lot, Greg, about, you want your team ascending towards the playoffs, and the Patriots are kind of limping, and they kind of flopped.
One out of 4, 1 and 3 out of the last 4
They flopped
games.
into the playoffs. and so I do think that the Bills are the better team, but I think it's closer than maybe a lot of fans are going to want it to be. I think that the weather does keep the score down. If this wasn't a weather game, I think the Bills are getting into the 30s pretty easily, 30 and beyond on this defense. But I have it as 24-19. I think it's a pretty close game throughout, and I think that the Bills finally get over that hump of winning a one-score close game in the playoffs to move on here. And I actually think that this is probably their more tough slugfest type of game in the playoffs going forward. I think some of the other matchups I like a little bit better in terms of the actual matchups and in the trenches and things like that. But this one's going to test them physically. And with this cold weather, there's some issues that I have with it, but I think the Bills eventually overcome it and are able to continue on with their mission here.
Yeah, it's here. Tom Jones, Osmosis Jones, Mac Jones, doesn't matter. Bills by billion. I have it very similar, 27-20. I think we see a little bit more scoring than people think, because like you said, I think that people are now overplaying the weather. Like before it was, oh, don't worry, it's not going to be as bad as the Monday nighter. Now all of a sudden people are talking about Arctic vortexes and whatever the heck is going on. And it is going to be cold, and cold sucks, and that is going to be uncomfortable. I think it's the reason that New England's going to be able to control the ball a little bit, because it is going to suck to tackle. They're going to have success running the ball. They had success running the ball in the game that we beat them. Like, Damian Harris had 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, he had a really good game. I still think the Bills have enough. And now a full complement of receivers, full health across the board, everybody ready. The best offensive line we found so far, the most productive defensive line. I wish I could have clipped it. There was a comment in the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and our friend Nate Tice, who's been on the Cover One Network a couple times here, talking about that people, and it was kind of a little throwaway comment, but they talked for a minute about how, I know a lot of fans were frustrated with the rotation of the Bills defensive line, but if you noticed this ramping up of production down the stretch in these final games, that's why all their defensive linemen are fresher than the other teams, because they haven't played 1,000 snaps like other people. They've all played 400 snaps and 600 snaps, and they're ready and fresher, and that's why you're seeing this surge at the end of the year. It's exactly what they built for this playoff run. So keep an eye out for that it's not an accident that the pass rush and the defensive line is playing better at the end of the year. It's what they designed with this rotation and with this reduction in snaps. So again, Aaron, you had it was 26-19?
I had 24-19.
24-19. I have it 27-20. We're both predicting a Buffalo Bills victory. A Buffalo Bills victory will mean you will need to take a look at our friends at bookseats.com and get yourself a flight booked to Kansas City to go out there, find a hotel, get you tickets, get you a wonderful flight and hotel and an awesome trip. Or heck,
or to Buffalo for Pittsburgh.
We could root for a Pittsburgh upset with the Steelers and over the Kansas City and host them here in Buffalo back to back. And then everybody who's listening to this could use book seats to fly into Buffalo and to buy seats there. Get yourself some Uncle Jumbos. Be ready. If we win this game, I want people out there ready to crack it with us right at the beginning of the show, cracking that victory Uncle Jumbos. But Aaron, any final thoughts for the people before we wrap here?
Yeah, no, I'm going to try to keep my anxiety as in control as I can. We got a long stretch here till Saturday, so make sure you're consuming all the Cover One content. Guys are putting in great work. I already have this week at the Roundup. Kyle and David did a great job this week on that, and then the guys over at the Hoof had a good show last night. Obviously, Anthony and Bruce went right before us, so if you didn't catch that, zip it all over. I know Anthony and Eric are working on a film room session here for this
bonus
week.
Film room for tomorrow.
So, and then we're going to, like Greg said, we're going to be back on Friday for a Friday night for a nice chat. So cancel date night with your girlfriends and husbands and come on over and hang out with us Friday night and get that anxiety out. And that's really why we're doing the show, is to kind of get that anxiety out and have a chat going live and chat with some of our good friends. Not a real formal show. So really excited that we're in the playoffs and hoping that this continues, and then we're not talking about a season end on the next episode we see you.
I just had the thought I'm going to be doing a show live after my ribeye. I've never done that. That's going to be interesting.
Why don't you bring the ribeye to the show?
I could. I'll bring the final bite on to have on the show as we get going.
There you go, man.
Thank you guys. The chat was awesome tonight. You guys were fantastic. Really excited to be able to get going here. Check out everything we have going on. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are